O holy Hieromartyr Martyr Father Vasily, missionary teacher in Alaska and North America.
But I think you should all understand who this is here in the corner with his relics and his icon, because he's another saint of Kodiak.
O soldier of Christ our God and heroic champion of the Orthodox faith, you offered your life in service to God and His holy church.
These three, there's Peter the Alley martyr, there's Father Herman, of course, and now we also have Father Vasily, the new martyr of Poland, killed by the communists in 1945. Because, you see, he was the priest in Kodiak. You know his story. He came as a little boy, eight or 9 years old, with his father, who was a judge in the Russian Empire. Actually in Poland, but it was the Russian Empire in those days. And he came to New York, and one of the bishops of Alaska, I think Vladimir, back in the 1890s, was there at that cathedral at that time. Otherwise he would have been in Alaska, but he was the only Orthodox bishop in all of North America, and he was in New York at the time when this little boy with his father came from Poland. And the boy was singing with the choir, just as you were doing. And the bishop, as they came for his blessing at the end of the liturgy, said to this little boy, "Young man, you have a very pleasant voice. If you ever become a priest, I have a parish for you." Well, he didn't forget that. He went to seminary, he married his Matryoshka Olga, and when they came to New York and presented themselves to Bishop Vladimir, he had a parish for him, all right, Afognak. I don't think when he told him, "You have a parish of Afognak," they had any idea where Afognak was. And he came there, and he built a church at Afognak. And then, as time passed, he was assigned also to the parish here in Kodiak. But his wife was constantly sick, and it was kind of cold and damp, as you all know. So they looked for a place further south. And he transferred from Alaska to Osceola Mills, Pennsylvania, which is actually the coldest town in Pennsylvania. It's much colder than Kodiak. So they moved to Connecticut. That wasn't any better. Finally, they moved to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. That was the worst. It was even colder than any other place. They gave up finding a warm place in America completely and went back to Poland. But by that time, he spoke Ukrainian, Russian, and English fluently. And he was made the chancellor of the newly formed Autocephalous Church, Orthodox Church of Poland. And he served there with distinction. He was also the head military chaplain between World War I and World War II. There were millions, especially of Ukrainian Orthodox people, in what was then Poland. And he was the chaplain for the Polish army. And then he retired. I forgot. During World War I, when the Germans invaded the first time, he and his wife fled all the way to Moscow for refuge, and they met Bishop Vladimir there again. And he took them in and found a place for them to serve, but the Soviets took over. It was a communist country. They couldn't get out. And then Poland became a separate country by the Treaty of Versailles. And he went to Poland, the Polish embassy, got a Polish passport, and got out of Russia. That's how he made it back to Poland. And then he was the chancellor for over 20 years. And the head military chaplain for over 20 years. You see him, as is in your icon, in his chaplaincy uniform. And then he retired, and the Germans invaded a second time, in 1940, when the World War I began. He didn't run away this time, he was too old to run. His wife had died, he was a widower, he was back in his home village. He survived the war. After the war, it was a bunch of, they called them hooligans, but I'm pretty sure they were government-sponsored from the Communist Party. They came to his house on Great and Holy Saturday. They tied him to a chair. And eventually shot him in the head.
Holy Martyr Father Vasily, we honor your suffering. Willingly you drank from the chalice of Christ.
Poor St. Basil. Basil died as a martyr, and it was a secret. The people couldn't celebrate it. They couldn't glorify him. It took a while for him to be recognized. It's a communist government. They couldn't glorify him as a saint as long as the communists were in charge. But as soon as the communist government fell in Poland, he was glorified as a saint, and he's the patron saint of military chaplains. Especially in Poland, they actually have a chapel for him in Warsaw. So he's ours. His first parishes were here in America, Afognak and Kodiak, and his relics are here. So that's who you have, and he's our saint too. Now the question is, what about us? We are all here to work out our own salvation. We are all called to be saints. That might sound a little inflated, a little too glorious, a little, pride, but it's not. It's your goal. It's what you've been baptized to do. You're here to work out your salvation, to become holy men and holy women. So I wish you all God's grace, God's blessing, God's mercy, and God's care as you struggle to serve Him and His holy church in Alaska.
You shed your blood in an ordeal surpassing nature. Now, as you rejoice with the angels, intercede with Christ our God on behalf of us.